Good evening. From the News Radio, 1120 a.m. and 93.7 FM, KPNW Studios, I'm Bill Lundun, host of the Wake Up Call, heard on this fine radio station Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 9, streaming online at kpnw.com. And Dr. Michael Bratlin, the evil genius behind Chris Dental, brings you this look at the news tonight. So, here's what's happening in Oregon. Archimoto fall down and go boom! So Archimoto is now suspended from the NASDAQ exchange, sending its already beleaguered stock into an early tailspin as it's shifted to the over-the-counter market. NASDAQ suspended the Eugene Electric Vehicle Company for falling out of compliance with a number of exchange listing requirements, namely among them not maintaining share price and shareholders' equity above minimum levels. So the company itself hit the market after its initial public offering, trading at $118 a share. Not bad, until you consider now it's trading at 30 cents a share, which is better than its low on Wednesday of 20 cents a share. At Archimoto's factory in Eugene, it's been reported to be mostly a dark building for a number of weeks with very few cars, if any, ever in the parking lot. Well, attorneys for Oregon's Department of Human Services, which of course regularly fails Oregon foster children, has subpoenaed 9 years of information from Senator Sarah Gelser Blauen. It includes correspondence with hundreds of people, including foster children, not only emails, but text messages and snail mail. It's part of a class action lawsuit that's been filed against Oregon DHS on behalf of Oregon foster kids by Disability Rights Oregon. Now, the lawsuit alleges the state has failed the children of Oregon in the foster care system in a myriad of ways, like placing kids in hotels to live and other places that would be considered inadequate, abusive, unsafe, and in some cases even worse. If successful, the lawsuit would force the state to actually make systemic policy changes on how it takes care of kids, particularly in foster care. Blauen, by the way, is a longtime advocate for kids in the legislature and has been critical of Oregon's DHS. Some people, at least some folks in law, thinks that, yeah, this kind of looks sort of like a harassment almost. We'll see. Well, I think we told you last week that this mysterious $350,000 contribution landed in pretty much an empty piggy bank of the Working Family Party of Oregon PAC. And that money came from the Working Families National PAC. The Working Family Party is essentially this political party in Oregon that has about 8,000 registered voters here in Oregon that, well, essentially has worked as sort of a shell corporation. I'll explain that in a second. The national PAC, though, for this Working Families group is largely funded by political action committees funded by, wait for it, Mark Zuckerberg and George Soros. And it's been used as sort of, well, I call it a shell corporation, more of a shell political party. And so money, lots of it, from out of state goes into this Working Families of Oregon PAC and somehow ends up making its way in the form of large donations to Democrats, far leftist policies, and very progressive politicians from out-of-state interests, and it allows them to hide their identities and avoid detection. It was theorized the money might likely be used to help incumbent soft-on-crime Multnomah County DA Mike Schmidt, who trails behind his challenger, Nathan Vasquez, in fundraising, actually like 3-1 behind. So the money comes to Oregon. It goes into the Working Family of Oregon account, and nobody thinks anything of it until Portlanders begin receiving live phone calls from the Working Families Party. And what are they doing? trying to convince the people on the other end of the line that Mike Schmidt is an amazing DA, and look at all the wonderful things he's done for Multnomah County and Portland. Then it turned out that the Secretary of State's office received information on April 29th that the party spent $60,000 on Schmidt's behalf. Now, where the money originated, in other words, from whence it came to get into the National Party's PAC, still hasn't been discovered at this point. And the other question is, is it going to spend the rest of this $350,000 on Schmidt? Remains a mystery, but you can bet pretty much probably. So you've probably been seeing the unrest in campuses all around the nation, this concerted effort, this obviously planned effort to oust Israel. Well, Portland State University closed its campus not one day, but 2 days. Looks like it may go on further unless the police step in after anti-Semite, pro-Hamas protesters took control of the school's Miller Library. Now, PSU President Mary Cudd, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler, Police Chief Bob Day, and Multnomah County DA Mike Schmidt, the same one we were just talking about, who incidentally failed to prosecute rioters in Portland during nightly riots during 2020, but is facing re-election now, says this has gone beyond protest. He says this could be criminal behavior. Oh, look at him getting tough. Can you see his spine? That little spine he's growing. So Schmidt said during that press conference in a very highly qualified statement that we'll prosecute the cases, pending review of evidence, of course, that's a quote, that is able to be collected, provided by law enforcement. I expect that charges could be filed. Okay, there's a difference between filing charges and actually prosecuting charges. And it's very interesting that all of a sudden now Mike Schmidt, who for night after night for well over a half year in 2020 allowed, of course, protesters, that's what they call them in Portland, to deface buildings, start fires, assault police, break out windows, destroy businesses, assault just random people in the street, and yet only prosecuted a handful of them. Lots of charges were filed. Very, very, very few were prosecuted. Well, this is fun. So a pair of Oregonians have filed a lawsuit that could force the state to pay up for a massive data breach last year that victimized 3.5 million Oregon residents whose driver's license and ID card information were stolen. The plaintiffs in the case are seeking class action status and a minimum $10 million judgment, and also ask the court to award lifetime credit monitoring and identity theft insurance for all residents who were victimized. Now, these two plaintiffs, Carrie Evangelist and Brian Ills, are seeking the class action status for all affected state residents whose information was stolen. And what kind of information was it? Names, addresses, birth dates, the last 4 digits of their Social Security numbers, their heights, their weights, and other information was hacked and stolen in May of 2023. 3.5 million Oregonians. Our population here is a little over 4 million. The lawsuit states that a critical flaw in Oregon's Move It software created a vulnerability that thieves exploited, and the suit faults the state for allegedly not appropriately acting to protect Oregonians against the weakness. Now, state officials said that anyone with an Oregon driver's license or ID card that was active at the time of the data breach should assume all of their information was stolen. Yeah. Now, the Oregon Attorney General's office, there comes the irony. You ready for irony? crafted a bill a few years ago that was carried by Democrats in the legislature to force businesses to pay for credit monitoring and identity theft insurance if their systems were hacked and private individuals' information was breached. But that, of course, wasn't applied to the state of Oregon government, which holds more of your personal information than nearly any other entity other than possibly the feds. Now, besides the DMV hack, the state has recently had 2 major breaches from the Oregon Health Authority, a breach from the Oregon Department of Revenue, even the Oregon Secretary of State's office. And in all of the cases, the state of Oregon simply tells residents to go out and purchase credit monitoring and to freeze their credit. How about the state maybe take responsibility? How about maybe the state pay for that, like they make businesses pay for it? Or maybe they could hire an IT or 2 that actually know what the hell they're doing. Well, in what the Biden-Harris administration called another step to support the growing momentum across America for a clean energy economy, the Oregon Department of the Interior announced Tuesday that offshore wind energy auctions are going to be happening off the Oregon coast. In Oregon, that plan has been widely panned not only by coastal communities, coastal cities, but coastal counties, Native American tribes, the fishing industry, and Oregon legislators whose districts cover the coast. The plan is expected to devastate Oregon's fishing industry, and the environmental effects are predicted to be dire. However, after perfunctory outreach by the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, BOEM, it's full steam ahead on a project that even BOEM can't say will work after the failure of a massive ocean windmill project on the eastern seaboard of the United States. The Biden administration says the announcement represents another, in their words, stride in our commitment to build a greener energy future while creating jobs and supporting families. Multiple studies have showed that these wind farms, which are massive, will be built in some of the most bountiful grounds for aquatic life on the West Coast and will more than likely than not disrupt and affect potentially the food supply and the entire chain of life on the West Coast. Maybe the jobs that this is expected to create are going to be in something like subsistence farming. And finally, the Oregon State Hospital in Salem is in immediate jeopardy of losing its eligibility for federal Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement. You see, federal surveyors put the hospital in immediate jeopardy status, investigating a patient who died in the admission department. While as they were going through, they had noticed that emergency response equipment, which should be located in one room, was scattered around the hospital. Interim hospital superintendent Dr. Sarah Walker says, "We fixed the problem, and we think we've got this taken care of." We'll see. Okay, Rick, it's time for you to roll out a big old industrial-sized can of Real. We'll see you next week. This Look at the News brought to you by Dr. Michael Bratland of Chris Dental. Call him today. He'll see you today.